valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, welcome to the Valuations Podcast, brought to you by Trulytics, the premier business intelligence platform for the wealth management industry. My name is Mike Langford, and I'll be your host, and this is episode 5. Joining me today is Jim DeCarlo, CEO of Strategic Wealth Management Group, better known as StratWealth. So that's how we're going to refer to it throughout the podcast today. What's really exciting to me about StratWealth and the conversation that I'm having with Jim during this podcast is, it's a really fast growing firm. They've grown over the last few years rapidly up to $1.5 billion under management, and their forecasts have them in the next couple of years getting to $3 billion. And so that part is exciting. But to me, the most interesting part of this conversation that we have together and the company itself is the focus on culture. We're going to be diving into a lot of kind of that warm and fuzzy stuff here, but it matters, right? The wealth management industry is a relationship-based business. It's human beings managing the money, human beings managing the relationships with clients. And it matters inside your organization how happy those people are, how empowered they are to do things that are meaningful for the clients and meaningful for them. Because if your employees aren't happy, if your advisors aren't happy, that tip of the spear of your business is not happy, that business isn't all that strong. And it's definitely not all that valuable for a potential acquisition partner down the line. And it's certainly not all that attractive for other advisors and other employees to want to come and join that firm, right? So we're going to dig into some really, really interesting stuff here. So buckle up, grab your beverage, and put on those earbuds, because here we go with Jim DeCarlo of StratWealth.
All right, Jim DeCarlo, thank you very much for joining us today. And I know it was quite the challenge, frankly, for us to get rolling today. We had to do some heavy breathing exercises and frankly, maybe some yoga because we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think I clocked it in at 52 minutes trying to get our tech right today. We had all sorts of issues, but we are indeed ready to rock and roll. So, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good, Mike. But I will tell you, we spent last year about $190,000 alone just on specific communications technologies, and now I'm going to release a treasure hunt looking for that 190,000.
You're going to have a word with your tech guy later on today. Like, hey, next time I need to record a podcast, It should be click a button and I'm ready to rock and roll.
New rule.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, again, thank you very much for joining us, Jim. The way I like to intro all of these, when we have a guest, all the podcasts is really to kind of talk about the journey, like what brought you to StratWealth and how'd you get here? Because everybody's journey is a little bit different. And what you find and what I think the audience, the listeners pick up on that is, little tidbits along the way, because, we're all on our own little journey here and experiencing things. And there's little things we can learn along the way that inform. And sometimes hearing somebody else's story kind of helps. So, what brought you to StratWealth, kind of a little bit of high level, maybe that 30,000 foot overview of the career. And maybe like kind of where you see things going. We'll go. That's the way the show will go today.
Okay, Mike, it's great. Look, I don't think people are interested in my career. So although it did take me overseas for almost 2 decades, so I had a chance to spend a lot of time over in Australia. I married an Australian back in the 90s, and we returned here to the U.S. about 5 or 6 years ago with our four kids in tow, and we've been blessed to be working with StratWealth for the majority of that time. So if I go all the way back, and I won't go too far, I went over to Australia to play lacrosse and met my wife. That's what took me there. But the industry was my first start, and I never left it. Financial services and working with advisors has been what I've been doing for almost 30 years now. Australian financial services is, contrary to most Americans, particularly who grew up in the era of Crocodile Dundee, think that Australia is not advanced. In fact, Australian technology is far more advanced. The financial services industry is far more advanced there than it is here. The U.S., most Americans don't know this, but the U.S. was the last country on earth to have cell phones. because the big telecommunications companies were just denying change. The Australian market we invented Wi-Fi, which we take for granted now, but the Australians invented that. And because the industry over in Australia it's agnostic, it's open architecture, it's vertically integrated. So you have a very, very advanced technology platform in Australia, which was my role. Bottom line, I've been working with advisors for, like I said, almost 30 years, really in the area of improving their business model through technology. And that led me into leadership development, leadership training, because you can't install change at the technology level if you don't understand what drives people to embrace change. And anyway, that brought me back ultimately to the U.S. and here I am at StratWealth.
That's really cool. I love that story. And it is fascinating to think about that. We have, I live in Texas now, in Austin, Texas, and I often joke, as being somebody from the Northeast, there's a little bit of a Northeast superiority complex. And I think more broadly, there's definitely an American superiority complex, right? We think Absolutely. Everything we have here is the best. It is the newest. No other country can even, toe our line. And then you occasionally do go overseas and you see some things that are a little shinier in some respects. What do you attribute that to, by the way, in Australia, that they're a little more advanced or ahead of the curve when it comes to financial technologies and so forth? What do you attribute that to?
Necessity is the mother of innovation.
Okay.
They are a very isolated country. They only have 6 cities in a continent the size, landmass the size of America. So you've got, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Perth. And then, of course, you've got Hobart down there in Tasmania. So it's 6 states or territories. But they're so diverse geographically that they have to be creative and innovative all the time. They're also able to look out and learn from other countries. So they look at what's happening in the U.S. and go, no, thank you. Yes, thank you. No, thank you. I'll take that. I'll leave that. I'll pick that. You can keep that.
Okay.
And they do it all over the world. So they go to so Samsung, Sony, all the Asian, Japanese cultures that bring technology into this country and into Europe, pilot all of that first in Australia. We see stuff first before the rest of the world.
That's very interesting. So what was it that, so as you came back to the States, what was it that brought you to StratWealth? So, you've got this mindset, I guess, from your experience in Australia that, you want to be very innovative, tech forward, and a certain way of doing business that kind of in the formative years of your career. And here you come back to the States and obviously looking for opportunity. What are you going to do here? And so what made you decide on StratWealth? What was it about it that made it the right fit for you?
Great question. I wasn't looking. When I bumped into StratWealth, I was sitting on a panel with the president. We were talking about best practice. And afterwards, he said to me, "You want to grab a cup of coffee?" And they're local enough in the Maryland area for me to want to spend some time with them. And as a firm, they were going through their own change curve. There's always a change curve of, deny, resist, accept, explore. And they were kind of in this accepting stage of change, which was we've been flatlining for a number of years on our growth, and we can't quite figure out why. Would you come in and have a look and talk to us about what we're doing at the highest level and talk to our leadership team and our board? And I did. What attracted me to StratWealth was the fact that they were there were 2 things. One, they were quite large. They were very successful up until that point. When I met them, they were about $850 million in assets, and they had almost 30 staff. So it was big enough to get my teeth into. When I left Australia, I ran an $83 billion platform that touched 16,000 advisors, and we did $5 billion of new business a year. So I'm used to a bigger team. So when I came to StratWealth, I liked the size, but I also liked that they were sitting on this value proposition about we want to run a better business for our people and deliver better services for our clients. And they were really focused on that. And that spoke to me about purpose. And And one thing led to another, and they appointed me as chief executive officer about 3 years ago.
It's fantastic. That's really cool. So you mentioned, in our first conversation we had a few weeks ago, we were on a call with Carla McCabe, the director of practice management at TrueLytics.
Right.
And one of the things you mentioned, it was that how important it is, how important culture is actually, to you as an individual, as a leader, but also to an organization. You said you kind of had a bit of an aha moment there. And so, one of the things, I like this model you had for the company, this you grow, we grow concept. Would you mind kind of unpacking that a little bit? Because I think it's great. It's so important, in terms of the value of the company, that, the culture is key. Absolutely.
And you're getting me off the back of Schwab Impact. So in fact, Schwab invited myself and our COO, Patricia Achterhoff, to present. And we invited one of our change agents as well, Mark Culp. So the three of us did a 75-minute workshop at Impact just last week, talking about the competitive advantage in the firm is to harness culture. It's not always to improve technology or to lift your marketing game, or to improve your investment process. These are relatively commodities to the business stack. The difference is whether people and whether there's a culture for change. So the you grow, we grow concept sits in the belly of this understanding that every firm that is remarkable does really well. Apple, Whole Foods, Southwest, Starbucks, Uber, Airbnb, even McDonald's. These brands are phenomenal. But what they do really well is they understand the need to keep changing. And if you understand that need to explore, where you don't say, and this is where most advisors get it wrong, they're so fat and happy with where they've gotten to in the last 20 or 30 years that they just can't, they're like Kodak. They can't grasp a world that's not going to use film. It's going to go digital. They can't grasp a world that doesn't use their services the way they built them 20 years ago. I completely disagree with that. I think the game's going to change. I don't know what it's going to look like just yet, but it's not going to be what we built in the last 20 or 30 years, for lots of reasons. You have the accumulators now becoming the decumulator as people come over the hill and come down the back end. You've got technology moving now according to Professor Gary Hamel from Harvard, who wrote a book called The Future of Management. We're now running at 4 quadrillion units of information per second. In 1940, we were running at 14 units per second. You can't tell me that change isn't going to keep coming at us, right? So a company that understands the need for change just to keep pace with technology and its advancements and speed of information, that's the trigger, right? So you grow, we grow is to me, the engine or the fuel or the propellant that says, if you're part of this organization, we want you to see where we're going. We want you to help us get there. We want you to be able to speak safely and openly about who we are, what you're feeling, what you're seeing. We need to have innovation workshops. We need to have ideas shared at all times. We need to be flattened. We're not hierarchical, because 30 people is much better than 5. Right? The leadership model at the top from the 1940s and 60s no longer exists. It's got to be bottom up. And that means you've got to embrace the want for other people to be on the journey to grow. You grow, we grow. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And it's interesting. You mentioned, you talked a lot about change there. And I had a little note here to talk about the concepts of embracing change, right? Because you in our earlier conversation, you talked about how important it was for businesses to have a business model that embraces change. Yes. And I love that. One of the things I've been in the financial services industry like you pretty much my whole career, right? I started right before the internet got it started, 1994. There you go. Answering phones for mutual fund companies back in the day up in Boston. And, you do occasionally bump into those folks who like they've been around for a while, so they've seen a lot of change, but at a certain point in time, they kind of mentally, I guess you plateau, right? I've been here, I know my job, I'm good. And they kind of resist like that next wave of change that's coming their way, not necessarily to be belligerent, if you will, or, just steadfast in their ways. It's just, it's like there's that, I always joke that fat, dumb and happy. Like I'm good, man. I don't need to do any more. And I'm seeing a lot of that in the industry right now, right? Where people are begrudgingly, and maybe it's because we're seeing maturity, right? And advisors, the average age of an advisor now is over 50 years old, right? Creeping up towards 60.
Correct.
And there is just a kind of like, hey, look, I'm on the back nine. If I could just set cruise control, life will be good. How are you as a leader addressing that type of thing, right? Where it is easy for people to get comfortable and feel like they can cruise, especially since we've been in a bull market the last 8-9 years.
The answer to that actually links back to why I'm here. It's this is like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day.
Right.
I am here because the firm has come face to face with some of those facts. They've been around a while. They're 26 years old. We're almost 1.5 billion in assets today. We're across the Maryland footprint from kind of Columbia, Maryland, near DC, all the way out to the shore on the Eastern Shore. And they asked me, do we have a business model that is got scale and is repeatable? When we step away, do you think we've got the right framework? And I just said, point blank, you're not even close. And they were like, what do you mean? We thought we built this business model that is, sustainable and repeatable and renewable. I said, you don't have a culture that's designed for people to live into a business model that's meant to survive after you. Your organizational structure is wrong. Your deliverables for projects doesn't exist. You don't have a leadership program that helps people understand what their career path can look like. And you're leaving money on the table. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, well, most advisors end up looking just like you. And they end up with this average number of 2.3 times multiple on their, and it could be 4 or 5 or 6. In Australia, when you've got business models where the client experience is deeply repeatable and you can demonstrate that process-dependent client experience rather than a people-dependent client experience, and that's what most advisors have because they're really good at what they do. They're really good at their craft. And Mike, let me be clear. I don't see clients. As a chief executive officer, I am doing nothing but providing that framework I just spoke about across the company. To drive this thing to the next level, to go from 1.5 billion to 3 billion to 5 billion and then on to 10, it needs a leadership framework. But most advisors are people dependent. They love what they do. They love their craft. They love working with clients, and they do a little bit of everything on the outside around that. But they're in their own way. A purpose dependent business, one that is purposely anchored on its values and lives into those values and builds value for those values, holy smokes, the multiple on the back end of that is so much higher than the average advisor firm today.
That's fantastic. So, it's interesting to me, like one of the things I think that builds on that, and you mentioned it last week as well, is how important you see it as your job to ensure a high level of employee satisfaction, right? That your people are happy, that happy employees make happy clients. Can you, kind of dig into that a little deeper? Because, on a recent episode of the show, in fact, the most recent the episode before this, I think, we were talking about like, if I were buying a business, right? If I were looking to buy a book of business or acquire a wealth management firm, I would really want to see what the employee satisfaction firm score is, because I'm not just acquiring clients and assets under management. acquiring the people who are the tip of the spear in those relationships. And if those employees, whether it's somebody who's, in operations or, the person at the front desk or even the advisor, if those people aren't happy and if I acquire that business and there's going to be rapid turnover, the value of what I just acquired could decline rapidly. Right.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about employee satisfaction and kind of where you see it in the firm.
Yep. So we measure it every year. We've been measuring it for 3 years. This will be going on our 4th year. We started this whole change and drive to the next level. So we're at 850 million. Like I said earlier, they had been flatlining for a number of years, and the question was, why can't we get to a bill, and why can't we push through that? So it took them 21, 22 years. Let me put some numbers to this for you. It took them 21, almost 22 years to get to 900 million, say, right? It took us 3 years to get to almost 1.5. So we added almost 600 million in 40 months.
Wow.
Versus 900 million, 850 million in 21 years. How'd that happen? It didn't happen because we launched a new marketing strategy. It didn't happen because we have a new website. It didn't happen because we changed our pricing structure. It didn't happen because I created a referral program with different referral networks. Nope. It happened because we ripped out 7,000 hours across the business in downtime, using old technology, using old processes, and using broken steps that didn't allow people to do a better job. We invested more than 12 to 13% of everyone's time in cultural transformation and cultural development and personal growth. We developed business games that allowed everybody in the firm to have a say in the projects that we were going to run every year for the last couple of years. So when you allow people to put their hand on the wheel and participate in the change, even in deciding which changes we thought were the best for the firm to get to the next level, and then break that up into a project management methodology, which is what I bring to the firm, and then allow that project management methodology to track and hold people accountable and projects accountable to those tracks, you get what we've achieved. You get a $1 billion firm moving to almost 1.5 billion. You get expenses holding flatline for almost 3 years. So you can imagine what's happened to the profit margin. So what I did was I turned around and said, this isn't our money. You did this. So we're now going to have a profit share. So I launched with the firm. We designed a small profit share that every quarter we run 90-day sprints. And every 90 days, we open up the book and show what we did in gross revenue, what we did in expenses, and I share a portion of that back to everybody's salary every quarter, every year. That's hands-on, baby.
That's it. That's great.
Right?
Yeah. That's fantastic. And I love that approach, right? Because everybody feels like they're a part of the bigger, the larger business, right? And the larger mission of the business versus feeling like, hey, I've got my book of business. You've got your book of business. Yeah, we may be under the same umbrella, but I got my, I'm just focused on me. It creates a real connectedness at the firm. I think it's a great leadership approach.
Well, we gotta. I think as owners of a business, and I know we want to pay attention to the time here, but as owners of the business and people that listen to this podcast, many of them are owners. It's an indictment when you read the Gallup poll information that 32% of employees across the United States are actually engaged in their business. We're talking on Friday, and there's a restaurant that we talked about going to happy hour with one day called TGIF. I mean, we have a culture that's designed around thank God it's Friday.
Yeah.
And you've got such a low engagement level. And yet people come to work every day wanting to do more, be more, give more. We have a narrative here in the organization called that we termed serving others to make lives better. And that doesn't just go towards our clients. It also goes towards our business partners because we're working with other advisors, and it goes towards our people. When you serve others to make lives better and you lift them up, you grow. And that's where that's where we get the engagement. And I just think as owners, we have an obligation to give our people more adaptability, right? More love. Right. Use the L word, right?
Yeah.
More love. We treat people like family here. I have a very, very strong attitude that everybody matters. Everybody matters. It's not. And when you take that approach, extraordinary things can happen. We are so tight as a firm that is almost breathtaking, and it's just wonderful to watch all the creativity and the power that comes out every day, every week from the people here who run this thing. I'm just blessed to help sing the song at the high end.
That's fantastic. It's really interesting. I am a huge proponent of the concept that, like, look, you have to treat employees well. You have to treat everybody well. And in fact, I recorded a video and published it earlier this week on, are you making people comfortable or uncomfortable? And that applies to your clients, prospects, referral partners, but it also applies to employees and vendors, right? Because people have choice, and they have more choice than ever now of who they work with and where they spend their time.
Right.
And as an organization, it is really foolish to believe that employees are captive and they have no other choices of where they work, because increasingly people can work from anywhere. People will hire somebody who works across the country and works from home. It's not always, they have to be in this office chained to their desk, right?
Yes, exactly right.
So, keeping that in mind, that this person has a choice of where they spend their time, of who, what they do for a living. And if you make it too difficult on them, if it's not a warm and inviting environment, one where they feel like they're part of the team versus being, bossed around it all the time. Right.
Right. Yeah.
They might move on.
Well, I call it conscious business. I really do. I think, to be conscious about it, it's one thing to live the dream. It's another thing to be conscious about it, where you've got unconditional responsibility shared amongst the team, right? You have unflinching integrity. We're authentic in communication. We're impeccable to our commitments. We dream big. And it really fosters personal fulfillment, mutual respect, and really a sense of community. And I think that's why we have such high engagement.
That's fantastic. So kind of we're wrapping up here, but I wanted to make sure I came back to your session with Carla, because you mentioned she's the one who put us together. Carla McCabe put us together to get you on the show. And one of the things that you mentioned when we were first chatting was that you had a session with Carla, and it gave you a big, aha/OMG type moment. Oh my God, like, wow, these are some changes we need to make. I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing, briefly a story of like what that was like working with Carla at TrueLytics.
Yeah, absolutely. Carla is a very, very talented young lady. She has brought so many good ideas to my noggin that I can't. I lose count after a while. But we were in an M&A discussion, and Carla was with me and a few others at the table on the leadership team, and we were knocking around this idea of organizational structure and second generation, G2 coming in to be able to play in the ownership space. And we didn't have the structures that allowed that to take place. And we ended up landing in this exact place about culture. We ended up landing in this place about honesty and this place about transparency. And my aha was, and she was like looking at me thinking, Jim, you know all this. You've got to come clean and bring these people to their knees with this stuff. And we're on the table was a bunch of mints, right? And I've told this before. And we were kind of stuck. And I just kind of said, everybody, hold up. And I grabbed a mint. I said, here's your CRM that you don't use properly and is antiquated by at least a decade. And I threw it against the wall. I said, here's your rebalancing tool that I don't think is being, and I think there's a better one out there that we should be getting. And because you're not using it, you're using spreadsheets, you're doing it by hand. I threw that one against the wall. So picking up all these pieces, right? You don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have that. You don't have an HR process. You don't have leadership model. You've got a culture that's more around fear than innovation. And Carla sat there just smiling, like that's where it needed to go, DeCarlo. That's where it needed to go. And from that moment onwards, we really shifted and realized we can't do this M&A right now. We have to come back, scramble the egg to make the omelet. We got to break a few things internally, fix a number of things. And that's when, about 3 years ago, we went on a journey to change our technology and change our organizational operating agreement, everything. So we went from 4 shareholders to 9. I brought in G2 at the same time, so the 9 shareholders. We are 70% female in the business, of which almost half the board is now represented by women. So it's 50-50 male, female. This was some of the scrambling that we had to do to create a business model that says, hey, we're proud of this and people should be joining it. That's where we are today. And I kind of thank Carl because he was kind of pushed me in there.
That's fantastic. So what a great story. I love it. I had not heard the Mint story. I love the Mint story.
Yeah.
That's great. It is really interesting. That's great. Well, I really want to thank you for spending time with us today. In closing, I know people are probably going to, I'm sure of it, that people are going to want to follow up with you, ask you some questions, or maybe just kind of connect with you offline for a variety of reasons. What's the best way for people to find you?
I think our website is best. We have a new one launching in a matter of days, but the current one's still good. It's www.strat-wealth.com. We're in Columbia, Maryland. We also have an office on the Eastern Shore, and we're opening one in Annapolis in January. Yeah.
That's great. And are you on LinkedIn or any other social media?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Yep, absolutely. I'm on Twitter as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again, Jim. This is great. And we will have this podcast up shortly. I'm sure if people listen to it, they're aware it is up. It's in your earbuds.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you very much for putting up with our technology challenges we had for the first hour of our chat today.
We got there.
We did it. We certainly earned that TGIF experience today.
Oh my God.
And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank
Jim,
you.
And we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey there. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to the Valuations podcast. It really is an honor to have you spend some time with us each week. And the interview today with Jim DeCarlo was really, really interesting. And next week, we have James Hughes from Live Oak Bank joining us. And we're going to be talking about the financing options for acquiring a practice or a wealth management firm, or what you should be looking for if you're a seller who's hoping to attract qualified buyers to your practice or your larger firm. So make sure you tune in for that one. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not encourage you to send in questions or topics that you'd like to see us cover on the show. So feel free to email us at valuations@truelytics.com. Swing by the LinkedIn page, Facebook page, or Twitter page, or of course, visit truelytics.com and you can enter your stuff there on the contact us page. We really look forward to hearing from you because look, at the end of the day, this show is for you. While I enjoy talking and meeting our guests and kind of sharing my perspective and hearing their perspective, at the end of the day, this show is for you, and we hope that you take it and increase the value of your business, okay? So I hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you soon on the Valuations Podcast. See you later. Bye.